Let's be honest, there's something electric about watching someone score a last-second touchdown or hit a buzzer-beater shot. The crowd erupts, the cameras flash, and for a moment it feels like the entire world is united in the thrill of victory. But take a step back and look at our culture, and you'll notice something odd. We celebrate these moments in sports with wild abandon, dancing in the streets, painting our faces, throwing parades, yet when it comes to the game of life, suddenly the rules change. There's an unspoken hesitation, a strange social tension around people who get too excited about chasing big goals, winning in their careers, or even just being happy for their own success. Think about it. If your favorite team wins, you might scream with joy and call all your friends. But if you get a big promotion at work or finally reach a goal you've chased for years, how often do you downplay your excitement, afraid you'll look arrogant or out of place? Why is it that ambition in sports is admired, but ambition in life sometimes draws raised eyebrows? The truth is, somewhere along the way, a myth crept into our society that striving for greatness or celebrating personal victories is somehow selfish or even shameful. But what if that's exactly the wrong attitude to have? Here's the reality: winning matters, not just on the field or court, but in every arena of life. The same energy that surges through a stadium after a game-winning goal is the energy that propels people to overcome obstacles, invent new things, build lasting relationships, and leave their mark on the world. Getting excited about your life isn't just acceptable, it's necessary if you want to go from average to extraordinary. The legendary motivational speaker Zig Ziglar understood this better than anyone. He believed in pep rallies, not just for football games, but for everyday life. Zig knew that the secret ingredient behind every great achievement isn't just talent or luck, it's the burning desire to do your best, to wake up every morning ready to win, and to celebrate every victory along the way. But let's be clear, this isn't just about positive thinking or rah-rah speeches. It's about rewiring the way you approach challenges, setbacks, and even your daily routine. Most people sleepwalk through life, doing the bare minimum and hoping something will change. Winners, real winners, treat every day like it matters. They create their own pep rallies in their heads before stepping into work, before facing a tough conversation, before tackling a big project. And science backs this up. When you train your mind to focus on excitement and opportunity, you literally change the way your brain sees the world. You become more resilient, more optimistic, and most importantly, more likely to succeed. So why do so many people resist this idea? Why do some roll their eyes at motivational messages or dismiss stories of triumph as corny or unrealistic? Maybe it's because getting excited about life requires vulnerability. It means admitting you care deeply about your goals and that you might fail. It means stepping out from the crowd and daring to stand for something. In a world where cynicism is cool and disappointment feels safer than hope, it's easy to scoff at enthusiasm. But that's exactly why enthusiasm is so powerful, because it's rare, because it sets you apart, because it's the first step toward doing something remarkable. You might be wondering, how do I know this isn't just a motivational gimmick? Let's look at the facts. Across history, the people who changed the world, scientists, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, weren't just talented. They were obsessed, driven, hungry. They believed they could win even when the odds were stacked against them. And they weren't afraid to show it. When Thomas Edison failed thousands of times to invent the light bulb, he didn't hide his excitement for every small discovery. When Serena Williams grinds out another impossible victory, she celebrates each point with fire, never apologizing for wanting to win. Closer to home, you've probably met people who bring that same energy to their everyday lives. The coworker who always seems fired up for Monday mornings. The parent who turns bedtime into an adventure for their kids. The friend who tackles every challenge with a grin, refusing to be beaten by setbacks. These people aren't naive, they're strategic. They know that excitement and desire are rocket fuel for achievement. But let's make this practical. Imagine you start your morning with a personal pep rally. No, not jumping on tables and singing, but a genuine moment where you remind yourself, today is another chance to win. You focus on what's good about your job, your relationships, your opportunities. You set clear intentions to give your best, not just for a paycheck or praise, but because it's who you are. You carry that energy into your day, and suddenly everything shifts. Obstacles become challenges to overcome, not reasons to quit. Mundane tasks feel like steps towards something greater, and when you succeed, even in small ways, you allow yourself to actually feel the joy. You let yourself win. Here's the kicker. When you get excited about your own success, you inspire everyone around you. Enthusiasm is contagious. It lifts up teams, families, and entire communities. It gives permission for others to chase their dreams, to break out of mediocrity, and to realize that it's okay to want more out of life. But let's not sugarcoat it. Getting excited doesn't mean life is always easy. You'll face setbacks. Critics will try to pull you down. There will be days when you don't feel like celebrating anything. That's exactly when you need desire the most, because desire is what gets you back up after failure. It's the extra push that turns effort into results and results into legacy. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack the real secrets behind winning, not just the kind that gets you trophies, but the kind that makes life worth living. We'll look at how legends like Zig Ziglar used repetition to shape belief, how underdogs have rewritten history with sheer desire, and why attitude more than talent or luck determines who finishes first. We'll see how the stories we tell ourselves shape our destinies, and how a little intelligent ignorance can help you fly when others say you can't. So if you've ever wondered what separates winners from everyone else, or if you're ready to finally become one, stick around, because you were born to win. Not just at games, but at life. And if you can learn to get excited about your own journey, to harness the power of desire, and to celebrate every step forward, there's no limit to what you can achieve. But before we dive in, ask yourself, when was the last time you really let yourself get excited about your own goals? Are you willing to break the rules of mediocrity and play to win, not just for the crowd, but for yourself? Because the game is on and the next move is yours. Picture this. The alarm buzzes. It's early, maybe earlier than you'd like. Your room is still dark, the world quiet. Most people hit snooze, roll over, and wish for just a few more minutes of sleep before another day of routine. But what if, right at that moment, you started your day with a mini pep rally inside your head? No crowds, no confetti, no blaring band, just you gearing up to attack the day like it's the championship game. Why? Because your attitude at that very moment might be the single most important factor in whether today becomes just another ordinary blur or the next step towards something bigger. You see, the truth most people miss is this: excitement is not just a feeling, it's a strategy. It's the secret weapon you carry into every conversation, every project, every setback. Zig Ziglar wasn't exaggerating when he talked about many pep rallies before heading out the door. He knew, and the science backs him up, that your mental state going into any challenge doesn't just shape your mood, it literally transforms your performance. You become more alert, more creative, more open to opportunity. Your body language changes. People respond to you differently. You get noticed, and in a world where most people are simply coasting, that's an unfair advantage. Why is this so powerful? Because deep down, every human being wants to win. Not just on the scoreboard, but in life. Whether it's landing the dream job, building a thriving relationship, or conquering a personal fear. But somewhere along the way, most people learn to suppress that desire. Maybe they've been told to stay humble or not to get their hopes up. Maybe they fear disappointment or think celebrating wins is somehow bragging. But here's what Zig and every high performer knows. Excitement isn't about arrogance, it's about ownership. It's about saying, I care enough to give this my all, and I'm not ashamed to show it. Let's break it down with something as simple as going to work. Most people treat their jobs like a chore. They count the hours, do what's required, and keep their heads down. But imagine if you flip the script. What if instead you got up and said, today I'm going to bring energy and enthusiasm even if nobody else does? What if you approached each task, no matter how small, as a chance to shine, to learn, to move forward? Suddenly, your job stops being a prison and starts becoming a playground. You find things to get excited about. And here's the magic. Once you start seeing your job as exciting, it becomes exciting. Opportunities appear. Challenges feel like puzzles to be solved, not punishments to endure. This isn't just motivational talk, it's hardwired psychology. When you decide to get excited, you activate the reward centers of your brain. Dopamine, the motivation molecule, starts flowing. You get a burst of energy, a hit of optimism, and a boost in creativity. It's the same reason athletes perform better in front of cheering crowds, or why kids do better in school when teachers believe in them. Excitement is fuel, and the best part is you can create it on demand. But here's the real secret: excitement is contagious. When you bring a high level of energy to your work, your relationships, and your goals, people notice. They want to be around you. They want to work with you. Teams with high energy perform better. Families with positive, enthusiastic leaders are happier. Even strangers can feel the ripple effects. If you've ever walked into a room buzzing with anticipation, you know the difference. People talk faster, smile more, get things done. And it all starts with just one person deciding to bring the excitement. Still, skeptics might say, isn't this just faking it? Can I really make myself care about things that feel dull or unimportant? The answer is yes, and here's why. Feelings follow actions, not the other way around. Most people think they have to feel motivated before they act, but the truth is, if you act motivated, if you take action with excitement and purpose, the feelings follow. Try it. Next time you're facing something you dread, attack it with all the energy you can muster. Smile. Stand up straight. Tell yourself, this matters. Watch how quickly your mind starts to believe it. This mindset doesn't just apply to work or school, it's just as crucial in your relationship. Think about the last time you met someone new, closed a deal, or had a great conversation with your partner. Was it a dull, lifeless interaction, or was there a spark? That spark, the sense of excitement, curiosity, and possibility, is what turns ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. When you get excited about connecting with people, they feel valued, they open up, relationships grow. That's how trust is built, friendships are made, and love deepens. It all starts with your willingness to show up with energy and genuine enthusiasm. Let's not forget the big moments either. Major milestones, landing a new job, finishing a tough project, or starting a new relationship deserve to be celebrated. Too often people rush right past these victories, barely pausing to acknowledge them. But every time you let yourself feel excited, every time you mark a win, big or small, you reinforce the habits and mindsets that lead to more success. You send yourself and everyone around you a message. Winning is worth getting excited about. But there's an even deeper reason to embrace excitement. It's a form of self-respect. When you let yourself get excited about your own life, you're telling the world and yourself that your goals matter. You're refusing to coast, to blend in, to accept mediocrity. That kind of energy is magnetic. It's why people flock to winners, why leaders with passion change the world, and why the best teams rally around a shared sense of purpose. And yes, it's okay to be excited about all kinds of victories. Zig said it best, there's nothing wrong with being downright excited about your job, making a sale, getting a raise, meeting a new friend, or falling in love. In fact, those are the moments that make life worth living. We cheer for 5-yard gains in football. Why not cheer for your own progress at work, in your health, or in your relationship? Why shouldn't you get excited about building a life you love, about loving your family, about loving your God or your country? The answer is you absolutely should. Let's bring it back to the bigger picture. In every part of life, there will be people who tell you to tone it down, to not get your hopes up, to be realistic. But the truth is, realism without enthusiasm is just another word for resignation. Winners know better. They know that energy, real, authentic excitement makes all the difference. They know that every victory, every goal, every connection is worth celebrating. So the next time you're tempted to downplay your excitement, remember, you're not just cheering for yourself, you're setting an example for everyone around you. You're giving others permission to dream, to care, to fight for something better. You're turning life into the kind of game where everyone wins if they're willing to play with passion. Because at the end of the day, the people who get excited about life are the ones who change it. They break the cycle of mediocrity, inspire others to aim higher, and leave a legacy that goes far beyond trophies or titles. They understand that excitement isn't just an emotion, it's a choice. And every morning when the alarm buzzes and the world is quiet, you get to make that choice all over again. But what if excitement alone isn't enough? What if there's something deeper, something that can turn even the most ordinary person into a legend? That's where belief comes in, and that's what we'll explore next. Think back to the last time you really believed you could do something. Maybe it was acing a test, landing a job, or finally breaking a bad habit. Where did that belief come from? Odds are it didn't just pop into your head out of nowhere. Belief isn't some random spark, it's a fire that's fed over and over until it's strong enough to burn away your doubts. And the fuel for that fire, repetition, consistency. The simple, often overlooked act of hearing something so many times that it becomes part of who you are. It's no accident that the world's best coaches, leaders, and motivators, people like Ziglar, make a point of repeating their most important messages. They don't do it because their audiences are slow or forgetful. They do it because they understand how the human brain works. One of Zig's favorite strategies was as old as time. First, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. It sounds almost too simple, but that's why it works. By the time you've heard a message 3 times, it starts to sink in, shaping your thoughts, your actions, and eventually your identity. Why is this so powerful? Because our brains are like gardens. Whatever seeds get planted and watered, the most will grow. If you let negativity, self-doubt, or limiting beliefs take root, they'll take over your mind. But if you consciously plant seeds of confidence, possibility, and purpose, and you keep watering them with repetition, they'll crowd out everything else. This is why champions in every field train their minds just as hard as their bodies. It's not about hype. It's about programming yourself for success. Consider this. When you were a child, you learned the alphabet by singing it over and over. You learned to ride a bike by falling, getting up, and trying again until the fear of falling was replaced by the certainty that you could stay up. The same principle applies to your beliefs as an adult. Every time you tell yourself, "I was born to win," it becomes a little more real. Every time you hear you can do it, the wall of doubt gets a little weaker. But repetition doesn't just reinforce belief, it amplifies it. Over time, the things you repeat to yourself become your default setting. They're the mental software running in the background, influencing every choice you make. That's why the most successful people build rituals into their lives. They repeat their goals every morning. They remind themselves of their strengths before tough meetings. They celebrate small wins to prove that progress is possible. This isn't empty affirmation, it's mental conditioning. Zig knew this intimately. He didn't just talk about winning, he made his audiences repeat it, say it aloud, and imagine it in detail. He understood that the battle is often won or lost long before the first challenge appears. If you believe you're destined to lose, your actions will follow. But if you've spent weeks, months, even years telling yourself you're capable of greatness, your mind becomes a weapon no obstacle can break. Still, let's be real, repetition can work both ways. If you constantly repeat negative stories, "I'm not good enough, I always mess up, nothing ever works out for me," those become the soundtrack of your life. You start looking for proof that you're right, and you always find it. That's why it's crucial to guard your self-talk. Be intentional about the messages you let echo in your mind. The difference between winners and everyone else often comes down to the stories they repeat when no one is watching. This idea is so deeply wired into our culture that we often don't notice it. Watch any sports movie and you'll see the coach giving the same speech over and over. We can win this. The hero hears the same advice from every mentor. You have what it takes. Even advertisements use repetition to sell us on new habits, new products, new dreams. Why? Because it works. But here's where belief goes from just a mental game to something life-changing. Once you believe you can win, you start acting like a winner. That belief shifts your posture, your tone of voice, your willingness to try again after a setback. Belief changes your behavior, and behavior changes your results. The transformation might be gradual, but it's real. One day you catch yourself doing something you never thought possible, and you realize you're not pretending anymore. You've become the person you believed you could be. Think of someone learning to sail for the first time. At first it's awkward. They don't know the pitch by heart. Their confidence is shaky. But with every phone call, every rejection, every small win, something changes. By the 100th time, the words flow easily. The nerves disappear. They believe they're a good salesperson, and because they believe it, they become it. The difference between the rookie and the pro isn't just skill, it's belief, hammered into place by repetition. There's also a secret to making repetition realistic: emotion. Repetition alone can turn any phrase into noise, but attach it to real feelings and it becomes a force of nature. That's why pep rallies work. That's why music and rituals are so powerful. When you repeat a message with passion, when you shout it, sing it, or say it in front of a mirror, you create memories that last. You anchor your beliefs to moments of excitement, pride, or determination. This is why people remember their team's fight song or their family's favorite saying long after the details fade. So how can you use this in your own life? Start small. Pick one belief you want to build. Maybe I am resilient, or I always find a way. Write it down. Say it every morning. Link it to something you already do, like brushing your teeth or starting your car. When setbacks hit, repeat it out loud. Celebrate when you see evidence of it, no matter how minor. Over time, your mind will start to accept it as fact. And when that belief is tested by failure, by fear, by other people's doubts, you'll be ready. Repetition is also a powerful way to counteract negative influences. The world will try to tell you that you're ordinary, that you should settle, that your dreams are too big. But every time you repeat a message of strength, you build a wall against those voices. You remind yourself that your value isn't set by critics, setbacks, or even your past. It's set by the story you choose to believe. This is what made Zig Ziglar's message so enduring. He didn't just inspire people for an afternoon. He gave them tools to keep inspiring themselves for a lifetime. He encouraged listeners to make Born to Win their personal anthem, to say it so often it became a part of their DNA. He knew that belief, built brick by brick, was the foundation for every great achievement. Here's the bottom line: what you repeat, you become. Repetition is the bridge from hope to certainty, from dreaming to doing. If you want to change your life, change what you say to yourself and say it again and again until it's no longer a wish but a reality. But what happens when belief isn't enough, when the odds are stacked and the world says you're finished? That's where desire steps in, and it's in those moments when everything is on the line that desire shows its true power. Everyone loves an underdog story, the gritty, against all odds comeback. The moment when the world's expectations are turned upside down by one person's unstoppable will. But we rarely talk about what actually gives these underdogs their edge. Is it talent, luck, some magical intervention at just the right moment? More often than not, it's something far less glamorous but infinitely more powerful: raw, relentless desire. Take, for example, the legendary football showdown between Alabama and Auburn, a story Zig Ziglar loved to tell, not because it was about sports, but because it was about life. The stakes were enormous. Everything was on the line: championships, pride, legacy. And yet in the final moments, the game wasn't decided by the most talented player on the field or even the best prepared. It came down to a third-string quarterback, someone who by all accounts shouldn't have been anywhere near the spotlight. The first stringer was out with an injury. The second stringer had gone down just moments before, and suddenly the untested backup found himself staring down the biggest play of his life. Most people in his shoes would freeze. The pressure would be too much. But the magic of underdogs is that they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. With just a few minutes left, Alabama had a narrow lead, and all their young quarterback needed to do was play it safe, run the ball, let the clock wind down, don't take risks. But when a play broke down and he saw his halfback open in the end zone, temptation struck. He went for it, launching the ball downfield, never noticing the Auburn cornerback, the fastest man on the field, reading his throw. It should have been over. The cornerback intercepted the ball and tore off toward the opposite end zone. The crowd roaring, the championship hanging in the balance. He ran for personal glory, to set a school record, to seize his team's shot at greatness. But as he sprinted down the sideline, something unbelievable happened. The third-string quarterback who'd made the fatal mistake didn't just give up. He chased the play, cutting across the field, gaining ground with every desperate stride. At the 5-yard line, he hurled himself in a last-ditch leap, dragging the cornerback down just as the final whistle blew. The game was saved. Afterward, reporters crowded around Bear Bryant, the legendary Alabama coach, trying to make sense of what they'd seen. "How did your quarterback ever catch that guy?" they asked, incredulous. "He's not even the fastest on your team." Coach Bryant's answer has become the stuff of legend. "You've got to understand that Auburn kid was running for personal glory. My quarterback was running for his life." In other words, the difference wasn't talent or training, it was sheer burning desire. That's what the world misses about underdogs. The reason they're dangerous isn't that they're overlooked, but that their need is bigger, their hunger sharper, their drive absolutely unbreakable. Desire is the X factor. It's the force that pushes you beyond what seems possible, that keeps you going when common sense says to quit. It's what makes the difference between the person who gives up at the first setback and the one who finds a way no matter what. This isn't just a sports metaphor, it's a blueprint for life. Think about every major leap you've ever made: leaving a dead-end job, starting a business, pursuing a dream. The odds were probably against you. There were moments when you felt like a third-string quarterback, unprepared, exposed, one step away from disaster. What got you through? Desire. The deep, almost irrational need to keep moving, to make it work, to prove something to yourself and everyone watching. Desire doesn't care about resumes or track records. It doesn't care about your pedigree, your past, or how many times you've failed before. In fact, the best kind of desire is often born out of adversity. The athlete overlooked in tryouts, the entrepreneur told no 100 times, the student counted out by teachers or classmates. These are the people with something to prove, a fire that won't go out just because things get tough. Desire turns defeat into fuel. It turns embarrassment into a reason to train harder. It's the little voice that whispers, "Try again," when everyone else is saying, "Give up." But here's the most important thing to remember. Desire is not just an emotion. It's not the fleeting excitement you feel after a motivational video or the jolt of energy that comes from a big win. Real desire is a choice, a decision to act, to persist, to do whatever it takes long after everyone else has stopped caring. It's waking up early to put in extra work, staying late to finish what others leave undone, being willing to look foolish, fail, or fall flat just to get another chance at the dream. There's a reason Zig Ziglar compared desire to the extra degree that turns hot water into steam. At 211 degrees, water is hot, almost boiling. It's useful but limited. One more degree and everything changes. Steam can power locomotives, move mountains, reshape continents. In life, that extra push, the 1 degree of effort, focus, or resilience that comes from true desire is the difference between almost and it's the margin that separates those who watch history from those who make it. And you see this everywhere, not just in sports or business, but in the quiet struggles of everyday life. The parent who works 2 jobs to send their kids to college, the artist who paints for years before anyone notices, the student who battles through obstacles to graduate. These people don't always get headlines or trophies, but they're the real champions, powered not by applause, but by unbreakable desire. So the question for you is simple: how bad do you want it? Are you content to coast, to accept what's given, to let your story be written by someone else? Or are you willing to chase your goal like that third-string quarterback, knowing the odds, feeling the fear, but refusing to let it define you? Because here's the uncomfortable truth: most people stop at hot water. Most people settle for almost. But a rare few go 1 degree further. They refuse to quit. They keep running even when the crowd thinks the game is over. And those are the people who win, not just once, but over and over, because desire is a habit, not a moment. If you want proof, look at the lives of the people you admire. They may have started as underdogs, doubted by everyone but themselves. They may have faced setbacks so crushing that most would have disappeared. But their desire wouldn't let them quit. It made them relentless. And eventually, it made them unstoppable. Desire isn't just about reaching the finish line. It's about running your race with everything you've got every single day until the world can't help but notice. It's about making that last-ditch leap at the 5-yard line, not for the cameras, but for your own sense of purpose. It's about proving to yourself, most of all, that you have what it takes to win. But desire isn't just for heroes and highlight reels. In the next section, you'll meet someone who turned an impossible dream into reality, not through talent or luck, but through a relentless focus on what he had, not what he lacked. His story proves that desire isn't just for the chosen few. It's for anyone willing to claim it. Desire isn't reserved for those in the spotlight, nor is it always forged in the fires of glory. Sometimes it's born quietly in the heart of someone whom the world barely notices, someone facing odds so steep that everyone expects them to quit before they even begin. That's what makes the story of Pete Gray one of the most powerful, underrated lessons about desire you'll ever hear, because Pete Gray shouldn't have made it. By all the traditional measures, talent, physical ability, natural gifts, he was at a massive disadvantage. But he had something the rule books never account for: unbreakable willpower. Let's rewind to 1945. World War II had torn apart the world, and as a result, Major League Baseball rosters were decimated. Teams scrambled to find enough players to fill uniforms. Even then, the St. Louis Browns, one of the weakest lineups ever assembled, were a long shot for greatness. Among the men who suited up for the Browns that year was Pete Gray, a player who'd already beaten the odds in ways that defied logic. You see, Pete Gray only had one good arm, not from birth. He'd lost his right arm in a childhood accident, crushed by a truck. For most kids, that would have been the end of sports, the end of competition, maybe even the end of hope for anything that required physical strength or coordination. But Pete wasn't most kids. Instead of focusing on what he'd lost, he became obsessed with what he had left. He retrained himself to throw, hit, and catch, all with just one hand. He would practice for hours in the shadows, swinging the bat, scooping up ground balls, chasing after fly balls, refusing to accept the idea that he was done. Think about that. At a time when most people would have given up, Pete doubled down. He didn't look down and say, "This is what I don't have." He looked up and said, "This is what I do have." That mindset, more than any single swing or play, was the true source of his power. When scouts and coaches told him no, he heard not yet. When his teammates doubted his abilities, he let his determination speak louder than their skepticism. It wasn't just that he wanted to play in the major leagues, it was that he refused to accept the world's limitations as his own. He understood something most people never learn. Success isn't about being dealt the perfect hand, it's about playing the hand you have with everything you've got. Over and over, Pete Gray proved people wrong, not with blinding speed or a thunderous bat, but with grit. Every base he stole, every hit he managed, every ball he scooped up was a reminder that obstacles are just the beginning of the story, not the end. Of course, Pete's stats won't blow you away. He wasn't an all-star. He didn't set records or become a household name. He lasted just one season in the majors, and even then, he wasn't a regular starter. Some saw this as evidence that his dream had only sort of come true, but that's the wrong lens entirely. What Pete Gray did wasn't about numbers or fame. It was about showing the world and himself that no excuse is big enough to drown out desire. The power of Pete's story is in the details, the countless mornings spent practicing alone, the thousands of failures that didn't break him, the relentless drive to use what he had instead of wishing for what he didn't. He wasn't chasing glory or a headline. He was chasing the absolute edge of his own possibility. In doing so, he set an example that would inspire not just athletes, but anyone who has ever faced a wall they didn't build and didn't deserve. It's easy to miss the deeper message here if you only look at the surface. The world is full of people with more talent, more resources, more advantages than Pete Gray ever had, yet most never scratch the surface of their potential because they spend too much time making excuses for what they lack. Pete had every reason in the world to join them, to quietly slip away, to become realistic about his future, to listen to the naysayers. Instead, he made a decision. If I can't win with the hand I wanted, I'll win with the hand I have. You don't need to play baseball to understand that kind of courage. Maybe your own dreams have been written off by others or even by yourself. Maybe you've bought into the myth that your background, your circumstances, or your setbacks define your ceiling. But Pete Gray stands as living proof that the only limits that truly matter are the ones you accept. When you refuse to quit, when you keep swinging, keep hustling, keep believing, you move the finish line closer, one step at a time. And what about all those moments of frustration, failure, and rejection? Pete had plenty, but every single one became fuel. Every no was a challenge to find a yes. Every drop ball or missed chance was an invitation to get up and try again. That's the real gift of desire. It transforms obstacles into opportunities, setbacks into comebacks. The world might call it stubbornness or delusion, but winners know better. They know that burning desire isn't just stubbornness for its own sake. It's a compass pointing them forward, no matter how rough the terrain. Zig Ziglar said it best. Success is not determined by having been dealt a good hand. Success is determined by taking the hand you were dealt and using it to the very best of your ability. Pete Gray didn't just use his hand, he mastered it. He turned what the world saw as a liability into a symbol of unyielding hope. And every time he stepped onto the field, he reminded everyone watching that excuses are powerless in the face of someone who refuses to give up. You can carry this lesson into every part of your own life. The specifics don't matter. What matters is that your story, like Pete's, is unwritten. You can choose to see your limitations as walls or as hurdles. You can choose to listen to the critics or to the tiny voice inside that says, I can. The difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck is rarely found in talent, resources, or luck. It's found in desire, the kind that pushes you past what's comfortable and into what's possible. And here's the final truth. Pete Gray's journey isn't just about baseball or overcoming the odds or becoming a legend for one season. It's about the courage to dream without apology, to try without guarantee, and to keep going even when success doesn't look the way you imagined. It's a reminder that your greatest limitations can become your greatest strengths if you have the heart to keep swinging. But what happens when the world tells you something's impossible? When you're not supposed to succeed? When the experts say it can't be done? The next section is all about attitude, the underestimated power of intelligent ignorance, and why sometimes not knowing your limits is the ultimate advantage. So far, we've seen how belief and desire can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. But there's another trait that winners share, one that's just as powerful and maybe even more surprising. It's not something you can buy, and it doesn't depend on what you know. In fact, sometimes what you don't know is your greatest weapon. This is the secret of attitude and what Zig Ziglar called intelligent ignorance. Let's start with the basics. Attitude is more than just a mood or a passing emotion. It's the filter through which you see the world, the story you tell yourself about every event, every challenge, every opportunity. Some people walk through life with a permanent cloud over their heads, convinced that nothing ever works out. Others, faced with the same circumstances, see possibilities everywhere. What makes the difference? It's not luck. It's the choice, sometimes made moment by moment, to expect good things, to believe in growth, and to treat setbacks as stepping stones rather than dead ends. But what about intelligent ignorance? That phrase might sound odd at first. Isn't ignorance a bad thing? Not always. In the world of high achievement, intelligent ignorance means not knowing or not caring about the limits that others accept without question. It's the bumblebee that flies despite every scientist's insistence that it's aerodynamically impossible. It's the rookie salesperson who, simply because nobody's told them how hard it is, outsells veterans by refusing to play by the old limiting rules. Picture the bumblebee for a second. Engineers and physicists have calculated on paper that a bumblebee's body is too heavy and its wings too small to allow for flight. According to the math, it shouldn't be able to get off the ground, and yet bumblebees fly every single day. Why? Because nobody told them they couldn't. They're ignorant of the rules, but it's an intelligence rooted in action, not theory. They just do what needs to be done. Human beings are no different. How many times have you seen someone walk into a new job, a new challenge, a new environment, blissfully unaware of all the obstacles everyone else complains about? Maybe it's a rookie on the sales team who, never having heard that the market is tough, picks up the phone with a smile and lands deal after deal. Or the entrepreneur who starts a business in a field they shouldn't have entered because they didn't realize how stacked the odds were, and so they simply kept trying until they succeeded. There's something magical about those who approach life with intelligent ignorance. They act and then they learn. Instead of waiting until they're experts, they're not weighed down by a long history of failure or jaded by years of realism. They go in with hope, with energy, with belief, and often that's enough to shatter the so-called impossible. Zig Ziglar loved to ask his audiences, have you ever seen someone new to your business succeed spectacularly just because they didn't know any better than to try? Hands always went up. What's at play here isn't just naivety, it's a refusal to let other people's stories define your outcome. It's the courage to approach a challenge as if success is not only possible but likely. Yes, experience has its value, and yes, there are things worth learning. But history is full of examples where the most knowledgeable experts were blindsided by someone who didn't know enough to be afraid. Let's bring it back to attitude. When you combine intelligent ignorance with a great attitude, you become unstoppable. Why? Because attitude is self-fulfilling. When you expect good things, when you walk into a room believing you can add value, make friends, or close the deal, you carry yourself differently. Your energy shifts. People notice your confidence, your optimism, your willingness to do what others won't. And more often than not, the world responds in kind. But attitude is also a shield. Not every day will be easy. There will be setbacks, critics, and moments of doubt. Winners aren't those who avoid these. They're the ones who choose their attitude in the face of adversity. They refuse to become victims no matter what. They use humor, gratitude, and perspective as armor. Zig loved to say, you cannot tailor-make the situations in life, but you can tailor-make the attitudes to fit those situations before they ever arise. One of the most powerful lessons here is the importance of acting as if. Even if you don't have all the answers, even if you're scared, you can act as if you believe, because the action itself will create belief. The salesperson who acts as if they're the best, even on day one, will soon become the best. The new manager who acts as if they belong, even with doubt swirling inside, will soon find others following their lead. Attitude, fueled by intelligent ignorance, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course, there are limits. Blind ignorance can lead to disaster if you refuse to learn, listen, or adapt. But intelligent ignorance isn't about stubbornly refusing reality. It's about not letting fear of failure or stories about what's impossible paralyze you before you start. It's about taking massive action before you talk yourself out of it. It's about refusing to be an expert in defeat. So how do you cultivate this in your own life? Start by noticing the stories you tell yourself. When you face a challenge, do you reach for reasons why it won't work? Or do you allow yourself to dream, to imagine, to try before experience and realism drag you down? Try approaching your next problem with a dose of intelligent ignorance. Assume it can be done. Take the first step before you know exactly how. You might be shocked at how many so-called experts are really just experts at making excuses. The stories you admire of athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and underdogs are often stories of people who didn't know they weren't supposed to succeed. They started with desire, fueled it with attitude, and let intelligent ignorance give them the freedom to take risks others avoided. They made their own rules, and in the end, they changed the game for everyone else. Zig Ziglar saw it over and over. He met people in sales, in business, in life who didn't know enough to quit. They just kept going, they kept trying, kept hoping, kept acting as if winning was possible until eventually it was. Their attitude drew others to them, gave them opportunities nobody else noticed, and turned long shots into legends. And remember, this isn't just about big dreams or grand gestures, it's about the way you meet every day. Will you show up with a great attitude, ready to see opportunity in setbacks? Will you choose to be ignorant of the limitations that others accept? Or will you play it safe, waiting until you know every answer before you even begin? In the next section, we'll explore what winning really means and why doing your best, not just being the best, is the true measure of success. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to be the fastest or the smartest. You just have to be the one who refuses to settle for less than your best. If you grew up in a world obsessed with winning, where gold medals and first-place trophies seemed like the only goals worth chasing, it's easy to think that anything less than best in the world is just another word for failure. We're conditioned from a young age to cheer for the highest score, the fastest runner, the biggest deal. But when you really dig into what separates true winners from everyone else, a surprising truth emerges. Being the best is not what really matters. What matters is doing your best every single time, no matter the scoreboard. This is where the whole idea of winning gets turned on its head. In sports, business, relationships, and life, we spend so much energy chasing external validation, applause, rankings, bonuses, the fleeting praise of strangers. But those moments are by nature rare and temporary. Even Olympic champions spend most of their lives out of the spotlight, training, preparing, sweating in empty gyms. If winning is defined only by finishing first, then most of us spend our days feeling like losers, even as we accomplish amazing things. The real secret is that the greatest satisfaction doesn't come from beating everyone else. It comes from knowing you gave everything you had, that you left nothing on the table. Zig Ziglar captured this idea perfectly. You are number one when you get up every day and say, today I'm going to do the very, very best I can with what I have. That's the mark of a real champion, not someone who wins every contest, but someone who wins every day by refusing to give less than their best. Think about the Boston Marathon, a race so grueling that even the world's fittest runners are pushed to their limits. Most of the people who start the race know they'll never win it. But they also know that if they finish, if they cross the line on their own 2 feet, they are champions in their own right. The award at the end isn't just for the fastest, it's for everyone who has the courage to finish. This is a lesson that extends far beyond athletics. Maybe you're a parent working 2 jobs just to provide for your kids. Maybe you're a student grinding away at your studies while everyone else seems to have it easier. Maybe you're recovering from failure, heartbreak, or loss, and all you can manage is to get up and try again. In those moments, you might not feel like a winner, but you're demonstrating the very essence of what it means to win: persistence, resilience, and the willingness to keep moving forward no matter what. Here's the truth. You can't control whether you'll always be the biggest, fastest, smartest, or most talented person in the room, but you can always control your effort. You can control your attitude, your focus, your willingness to keep going when it would be easier to quit. Doing your best isn't a consolation prize, it's the standard that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary ones. Let's look at what this actually looks like in real life. Every day, people get up before the sun, put in extra hours at work, support their families, chase dreams that may never make the news. They deal with rejection, criticism, and sometimes crushing self-doubt. But they keep going not because someone is watching or cheering, but because they know the difference between good enough and my best. They measure themselves by effort, not outcome, and that's what sets them apart. The scoreboard might not always show their names, but deep down, they know they're winning. Now, this is where desire, attitude, and belief all come together. When you commit to doing your best, you tap into a source of motivation that doesn't depend on outside approval. You don't need the world to validate you because you validate yourself. Every challenge becomes a test of your character, not just your ability. Every setback becomes a chance to try again, to learn, to improve. And when you look in the mirror at the end of the day, you know without a doubt that you gave it everything. But let's address the elephant in the room. What if your best isn't enough to win by the world's standards? What if you put in your all and still come up short? Here's where the freedom comes in. When you measure yourself by effort, not just outcome, you free yourself from the tyranny of comparison. You realize that greatness isn't about being better than everyone else. It's about being better than you were yesterday. It's about showing up day after day, ready to grow, ready to fight, ready to give your all, even when nobody's watching. Zig Ziglar often spoke about the power of finishing the race no matter what. He loved the story of Dr. Randy Martin, a man who entered the Boston Marathon year after year. Dr. Martin knew he wasn't going to win, not by a long shot, but he also knew something even more valuable, that every time he crossed that finish line, he'd accomplished something that most people never dared to attempt. He'd stretched himself, endured pain, pushed past limits. He'd done his best, and for that, he was a winner in every sense of the word. It's a lesson that applies to every area of life. The world might never give you a medal for raising good kids, for being a loyal friend, for showing up when things get hard. But if you do those things with everything you've got, you're stacking up victories that matter far more than public applause. Your legacy isn't written in headlines or trophies. It's written in the quiet moments of courage, commitment, and consistency. And let's not forget, this mindset is contagious. When you live by the standard of doing your best, you give others permission to do the same. You create a culture at work, at home, in your circle of friends, where effort is celebrated, where people are encouraged to push themselves, where good enough isn't the goal. You set the tone for everyone around you, showing that greatness is possible when you refuse to settle. The beauty of this approach is that it works in reverse, too. When you give yourself grace on the days you fall short, when you forgive yourself for mistakes, you model resilience for others. You show that setbacks aren't failures, just part of the process. You remind everyone watching, especially yourself, that the real contest is inside, not out there in the world of rankings and reviews. Manadar that you process over your section. But the people set you by customers, at some you tutum, at ready customer de people, that them could the rates or about them award you renal. So redefine what it means to win. Measure yourself by your own standard, not the world's. Hold yourself accountable to your best and celebrate every step forward, no matter how small. In doing so, you'll discover the greatest prize of all, the confidence, pride, and satisfaction that comes from knowing you played full out with heart every single day. But how do you push past your limits even when the world insists that you can't? In the next section, you'll discover how intelligent ignorance, the refusal to accept other people's ceilings, unlocks possibilities you never imagined, and why sometimes not knowing you can't is exactly what you need to fly. Imagine if instead of dreading Mondays or counting down hours to the weekend, you started each day with the same energy as a stadium crowd before a championship game. What if the excitement that most people reserve for the playoffs or the final moments of a concert was something you channeled into your everyday life before work, before tests, before difficult conversations? That's the essence of the pep rally mindset, and it's the mental upgrade that separates people who drift through life from those who live it on purpose. It sounds a little strange, right? Most of us have been taught that pep rallies are for high school sports teams, not for grown-ups with real responsibilities. But here's the irony. As we get older and our challenges become more complex, we need pep rallies more than ever. We need rituals and reminders that prime us to approach each day not as a burden, but as an opportunity. You knew that the game of life is won and lost between your ears, and that you can change your day, maybe even your destiny, by getting your mind excited to win before you even leave the house. Let's break down what this really means. The pep rally mindset isn't about pretending every day is perfect. It's about choosing your focus, setting your energy, and building a habit of enthusiasm even when things are tough. It's about waking up and saying, this is a day that matters. I get to go after something important. I get to make a difference, even in small ways. When you start with this attitude, you train your mind to look for possibilities instead of problems. Your actions follow your thoughts, and before long, you find yourself showing up differently, more confident, more creative, more resilient. Why does this work? Because our brains are wired to respond to emotion and ritual. Athletes use pre-game routines to get into a winning state. Actors have backstage traditions that help them deliver their best performances. Even world-class surgeons and entrepreneurs use mantras, music, or movement to center themselves before a big moment. These aren't superstitions, they're strategies. When you create a mini pep rally for yourself, whether that's a few minutes of positive self-talk, a power playlist, or even just standing tall and breathing deeply, you're sending your mind and body the message, I'm here to play full out. Think about it. Most people roll out of bed and immediately bombard themselves with negativity, worrying about their to-do list, complaining about their commute, bracing for conflict at work. They never give themselves a chance to get ahead, but if you flip the script, even for a few minutes, you create momentum. You teach your brain that today isn't just another day to survive, but a chance to thrive. That momentum is real and it compounds. Each time you face a challenge with energy and intention, it gets easier the next time. You build confidence in yourself. You prove over and over that you can do hard things and enjoy the process. It's easy to dismiss this as hype or rah-rah, but study after study proves that mindset matters more than almost any other factor in performance. People with a positive, enthusiastic approach aren't just happier, they're more productive, more influential, and more successful in the long run. And the best part, you don't need anyone's permission to start. You don't need a cheering section. You can be your own pep rally every single day. This mindset shift pays off in ways big and small. When you approach your job with excitement, you notice things others miss, opportunities for growth, for leadership, for connection. When you bring a spark to your relationships, people are drawn to you. They feel your energy and want to be a part of it. Even your setbacks become easier to handle because you know you're showing up with your best. You stop dreading difficulties and start looking for lessons. Life stops feeling like an endurance test and starts to resemble a series of meaningful challenges, each one a game worth playing. Let's make this practical. What does a personal pep rally actually look like? Maybe it's spending 5 minutes in the morning reflecting on what you're grateful for, or visualizing your biggest goals. Maybe it's listening to your favorite song on the drive to work, or saying out loud, "Today is going to be a good day." Maybe it's reviewing your accomplishments before a big meeting, or sending a text of encouragement to someone else. The details don't matter as much as the intent to create a moment of energy, focus, and possibility before the world starts demanding things from you. Ziglar used to say that excitement is a habit, not a fluke. You get better at it the more you practice, and when you practice bringing a pep rally attitude into your life, others notice. You set a new standard for your workplace, your family, your community. People wonder what you're doing differently. Why are you so upbeat? How do you keep your energy even when things are tough? The answer isn't magic, it's mindset. You've trained yourself to look for the upside, to expect progress, and to find meaning in the effort, not just the outcome. There's another hidden benefit to this approach. When you celebrate your own small wins, you give others permission to do the same. You create a culture where effort is valued, where people root for each other, where victories of all sizes are noticed and appreciated. This isn't just about feeling good, it's about building environments where everyone can succeed. When people are excited to be part of something, they work harder, support each other more, and reach higher. The pep rally mindset becomes a rising tide that lifts all boats. And what about those who say, "That's just not me, I'm not the cheerleader type"? Here's the truth. You don't need to change your personality. Enthusiasm comes in many forms. For some, it's loud and expressive. For others, it's quiet confidence. What matters isn't the volume, but the commitment. When you choose to show up fully, to care deeply, and to give your best effort, you're embodying the spirit of the pep rally, whether you shout it from the rooftops or simply carry it inside. At the end of the day, this is about more than just winning at work or reaching a goal. It's about choosing to live on purpose, to wake up each day with the belief that your actions matter and your energy can change the world around you. The greatest victories in life aren't handed out to the most talented, but to those who keep showing up, keep believing, and keep bringing their best no matter what. So as we wrap up, consider this. Are you willing to become your own pep rally? Will you be the spark that ignites your own success story? Because when you do, you'll find that excitement isn't just for the big moments, it's the secret ingredient that turns every day into a win. And as we bring it all together in the final section, you'll see how desire, belief, attitude, and excitement form the ultimate playbook for becoming a true winner no matter where you start. You've made it to the end, and by now you can probably sense it. Winning isn't some rare lightning strike reserved for a lucky few. It's a skill, a habit, a mindset. It's a choice you make day after day, long before the world sees your results. And the real secret? You've had the power all along, not in some mystical cliche way, but in the daily practical reality of your desire, belief, attitude, and excitement. Let's tie it all together. Maybe you started this journey thinking about trophies or first place ribbons, but now you know true winners aren't defined by the medals on their walls, but by the fire inside. Winning is about the small decisions you make when no one is watching. It's about how you show up after a loss, how you encourage others when you're down, and how you keep chasing better when good enough would be easy. Zig Ziglar's wisdom echoes across every story we've shared. You don't have to be the smartest, the fastest, or the strongest. You just have to be the person who keeps showing up, fueled by a purpose bigger than any scoreboard. You have to be willing to celebrate not just the big wins, but the effort and growth behind them. When you get excited about your own journey, when you make a habit of cheering for yourself, you make it easier for others to believe they can do the same. Look back on the stories we've explored. The third-string quarterback who chased down the fastest man on the field wasn't driven by talent alone. He was running for his life. Pete Gray didn't make it to the major leagues because of a perfect hand. He played the one he had with every ounce of heart. Every real champion you've ever admired, from the world stage to your own circle, shares the same invisible qualities: burning desire, unwavering belief, a winning attitude, and a willingness to get excited about progress even when nobody else is looking. And let's be honest, the world won't always celebrate you for these things. Sometimes the crowd is silent. Sometimes the effort goes unnoticed or the journey feels lonely. But in those moments, you'll find out what you're really made of. You'll discover that victory isn't just about a final score, but about the strength you find when you refuse to give up, about the lessons you learn when you choose growth over comfort, hope over cynicism, and effort over excuses. There's a paradox at the heart of winning that most people miss. The more you focus on giving your best, the less you need the world's approval. The more you measure progress by your own standards, the more fearless you become. You stop chasing someone else's definition of success and start building your own. And along the way, you become the kind of person who inspires others, not by being flawless, but by being authentic, resilient, and full of purpose. So what does this mean for you right now at this very moment? It means you have a decision to make. Will you drift along waiting for motivation to strike, or will you create it yourself? Will you buy into the myth that greatness is out of reach, or will you start acting like the winner you were born to be before anyone else notices? The choice is yours. It's as simple as deciding today to bring more excitement, more belief, more effort into your life than you did yesterday, to turn every setback into a setup for a comeback, to see every challenge as an invitation to grow. If you remember nothing else from this journey, remember this: desire is the extra degree, belief is the foundation, attitude is the lens, excitement is the fuel. When you put them all together, you become unstoppable, not because you never fail, but because you never let failure have the final word. Start with small steps. Build your own morning pep rally, even if it's just a single determined thought: today I will give my best. Practice intelligent ignorance. Dare to be the one who doesn't know they're supposed to quit. Turn setbacks into stories and let every no fuel your next yes. Celebrate your progress no matter how humble. And when the world tells you it can't be done, remember the bumblebee fly anyway. Winning isn't about the finish line, it's about the way you run your race. Every morning is a fresh start, every challenge an invitation, every moment an opportunity to grow stronger, braver, more alive. You're not defined by your failures, but by your persistence. You're not limited by your resources, but by your imagination. And you're not judged by the crowd, but by your own reflection at the end of the day. So go ahead, get excited, cheer for your own progress. Choose belief over doubt, effort over excuses, desire over comfort. Be the spark for your team, your family, your world, and above all, remember, you were born to win, not someday, but today. Not for anyone else's approval, but for your own joy, your own pride, your own life. The real secret of winners isn't luck, talent, or circumstance. It's the relentless, joyful, stubborn commitment to give your best again and again until the world can't help but notice. That's the playbook. That's the path. And starting now, it's yours to follow.